We're talking about the third of the patriarchs, Yaakov or Jacob. In some way, he was the greatest of the three, and it was reflected in the change of his name from Jacob to Israel, and we are the children of Israel. So, of the three patriarchs, we most often refer to ourselves as the children of Jacob, children of Israel. So, here's what happens. He has a bunch of kids, big family, and he favors the child that is born to Rachel, to Rachel, and that is Joseph. And he buys him or makes him a very special coat. I don't know where he would buy it. Back in those days, he must have had it made. A special coat. And the brothers are jealous. The brothers are all older than him. They're terribly jealous. They plan to kill him. They change their mind and decide to sell him. And they sell him to the merchants. And they eventually, Joseph ends up in Egypt. Eventually, he's going to become the viceroy of Egypt, saves them from a famine, becomes the big hero, and so on. Now, the conventional understanding of the story, and of course, if it's conventional, then it's probably not the real meaning of the story, because this is the Torah,
right?
No conventional stories in Torah. So the conventional understanding is Yaakov made a mistake. He should not have shown favoritism. You got to treat all your children equally, love them equally, and so on and so forth. Because he showed favoritism, this is the bad results.
So how do we know that it wasn't Hashem's leading him to do this, to trigger all of these things, so that they would happen? Is that hard to...
No, there's no doubt that that's exactly what happened.
Oh, okay.
Because these are all divine developments leading to ultimately to the event at Sinai.
Nice.
So this idea that God came down to Mount Sinai and wrote the book of Genesis to tell us not to favor one kid over another, no.
Right.
Dr. Phil can tell you that.
That's funny. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, the opposite is the truth. That the brothers would be jealous, that is amazing, surprising. These were great people. They were the heads of the tribes, and they were righteous people, perfectly righteous people. They're Jacob's sons, every one of them holy. Their mothers were holy. This petty jealousy? Grown men jealous over a coat? This doesn't make sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the moral of the story, if you want to take it at a very simple level, is that jealousy is always inappropriate.
Always, okay.
It was not a mistake on Jacob's part to show favoritism. But let's look at that for a moment. When you have a number of children, and you happen to like one more than the others, and he's cuter, he's more like you, or less like you, so you can like him better, and you show favoritism, and there is no justification for the favoritism, that is a terrible mistake. And you should never do that. But if one of your children happens to be exceptional, if one of your children happens to be head and shoulders above the rest, are you going to make believe it's not true?
That would be really, really hard I mean, even for me as a parent, if I saw something, if I had, 4, 5, 6 kids, or whatever, and there was one of them, for example, just to put it in modern day terms, that seemed to excel in sports or maybe even in singing or something like that, right? And to see how the other kids, in my mind, I would be thinking, well, if I do treat them all the same, well, all the other 4 kids want to sing too, but they really can't, but she can, so do I give them everything that I'm going to give her? And if I do, what's that going to do to to their self-esteem or hers or whatever the case may be? There's so much to consider, and it'd be really confusing.
So what would be the right approach to this whole thing? You get your other children to be proud of their sibling.
Nice.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You say to the other kids, wow, your sister is good. And you get them to join you in admiring the talented one.
Nicely put. Wow.
So in this case in particular, Joseph wasn't just a little more talented or cuter. When it came to the future of the Jewish people, Joseph had the right idea, and the brothers were mistaken. The brothers were shepherds, as we read in the Parsha, that Joseph went out to visit and see how his brothers are doing out in the pasture where they're taking care of the sheep. They believed in being shepherds. They believed in being removed from the jungle cities, the asphalt jungles. They believed in staying away from the masses, staying away from the corruption of business and so on, and to stay out in nature and commune with God and be a holy people. Joseph said, anybody can do that. It doesn't make you holy. Just isolated. To be a holy people, you have to make the world holy. Holiness is not for you to keep.
It's to spread.
So if you have, right?
It's to spread.
Right.
Right.
You were given a talent for holiness to make the world holy. Why are you hiding in the fields and letting the rest of the world go about their lives blindly, not knowing up from down and so on? Joseph insisted that you have to go out into the world, you have to be in contact with people and have a positive effect. They said, you try that and all your holiness will be lost, you will become corrupted like the rest of them, and instead of elevating them, they will bring you down. So that's why at first they thought, we got to get rid of him. He's a bad influence. He's taking us in the wrong direction. Then they decided, you know what? The man is so confident that he knows what he's doing. Let's sell him into that world that he thinks he can affect. And let's see, as the verse says, they said, let's see what will become of his dreams. They were referring to his philosophy. And they called it dreams because it was totally unrealistic. So they sell him down to Egypt, and they were sure that they would never hear from him again. He would become assimilated. He would worship idols just as the Egyptians did. He would become corrupt like they were, and that would be the end of his philosophy.
Right.
Jacob, on the other hand, knew that he was right, and that the future of the Jewish people is to be involved with the world and affecting the world. A light to the nations, not hermits.
Right. And not to be confused with proselytizing, but just not keeping it to themselves, like you said, not bottling it up.
Good point. So Jews living in ghettos was the exact opposite of what our fate and our mission is supposed to be. Being isolated, being walled off from the rest of the world was not the right way to go, because it was forced on us. But the point was, we should not be hiding away and just talking to each other and keeping each other Jewish and holy, and that is pointless. That is not fulfilling our mission. So Jacob told his children, Joseph has the right idea. You got to listen to him. He's right. Should he not have told them that? Should he not tell the truth that is so vital and so necessary? Of course he should. That they responded with jealousy, that's what was wrong. Not Jacob.
And Jacob was around 17-ish now?
Joseph was 17.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Yeah, Joseph, I apologize. Was 17 or so, right? About this time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jacob is about 90-something.
Okay. So for me, it's kind of weird to see how a 17-year, because the storyline almost makes it look like a bratty little child, right?
Right.
Talking about it, but in the storyline, he's actually 17-ish, and it's like he's a pretty mature little fella. I mean, he's not a young kid. I mean, he would know what he's doing, and he would probably have carefully thought it out, knowing how his brothers felt about him already.
Yes.
So,
yeah, at 17 in those days, you were as mature as you were going to get.
Right.
Because they became mature at around 3.
Right.
So, so the issue was not a coat. The issue was the future of the Jewish people and their purpose and so on. The entire book of Genesis, the entire book of Vayeishev, is simply describing the evolution or the development of the Jewish people. Once we get to the 12 tribes, who they were and where they were, that's the end of the first book of the Torah. So you might say the first book of the Torah is simply a book of who. Cast of characters.
Right. Wow.
Starting with Adam and Eve and ending with the children of Israel. Then the whole saga begins. The children of Israel are enslaved in Egypt, and that's the whole second book of the Torah.
That's kind of cool. I never looked at that overview like that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So the first book seems to be, as the story unfolds, it seems to be pointing out the terrible effects of jealousy, beginning with Cain and Abel. Right from the start, jealousy, the toxic, horrible inability to get along, which we call jealousy. Cain and Abel, Abraham's children, Isaac and Ishmael, Isaac's children, Yaakov and Esav, and now Joseph and his brothers, all jealousy. Now, we can learn it on a deeper level and say they were all the fathers of the human race, Cain and Abel. The patriarchs were the fathers of the Jewish nation. They were debating cosmic issues, not petty jealousies. And yet, the jealousy was so destructive. Yes, they were arguing about huge issues. But if they had argued it objectively, it would have produced positive results. The jealousy angle, the jealousy ingredient, it poisons everything, even the most important discussions and debates. If you add a little jealousy, it all goes downhill. So the Torah is actually telling us that as long as there is jealousy in the world will not be redeemed or perfect or perfected. The perfection will come when the jealousy turns to admiration.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm of the belief that if that story happened and unfolded differently, and they decided to change their mind and take him back home to their dad, this still would have happened one way or another, because that was the intent of the Creator, was to get him to that point of being the ruler over the land. So if that didn't happen, I'm sure something else would have happened and unfolded. Would you say the same thing?
Well, doesn't Joseph himself say that?
Yeah, he did.
When his brothers come down to see him in Egypt?
Right.
He says, you had bad intentions, but God's plan brought me here and made me the viceroy, and I saved a lot of people from starvation.
If I'm going to put a different spin on something else, if you, Rabbi Menace Friedman, were to be the defendant for the brothers that sold him, in not in saying they didn't do it, but in presenting as to why would they follow through with such a drastic plan, and to bring the father back into an okay, I see why you did that sort of a thing, how would you approach that?
So that's what I was saying.
Okay.
Their motive was they believed that his philosophy was dangerous.
Okay.
And that it went against the vast eternal plan for the Jewish people, and they were convinced that the results would be fatal, that the Jewish people would stop existing, or would never happen.
Wow.
Wouldn't get off the ground, would never even take off. So philosophically, they were correct in their suspicion.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They weren't right in their conclusion.
Gotcha.
But their suspicion was founded, well-founded. And the dreams, by the way, where he would tell them his dreams about everybody bowing to him, that didn't help. I mean, anybody who comes around boasting
right.
is obviously not head and shoulders above anybody.
True.
Because if you have to boast, then obviously your qualities are not real. Because boasting is unreal. It's hot air.
Right.
So what was the point of those dreams? Not only did Jacob try to tell his children that Joseph was something special, God was trying to tell them through the dreams. So God is telling them in a form of prophecy, you will all bow to him, meaning eventually you're going to see he's right. And yet the dreams themselves increase their jealousy,
right.
Their zealousness. So what the story behind the dreams is something like this. The sages say that when you have a dream, every dream contains maybe a little truth, but also some nonsense. It's a dream. You're in a dream state. How do you know which part is valid and which part is the nonsense? So dream interpretation was a great subject and wisdom. I mean, it still is. We just don't have too many people who are good at it.
Right.
As we see when Joseph interpreted the dreams for Pharaoh. And Pharaoh was so impressed that he appointed him prime minister, viceroy. So interpreting dreams is a real wisdom. It's a real science. When you are not sure what a dream is saying, what you're supposed to do is ask others. Tell your dream to somebody and see what their reaction is. Their reaction tells you what the dream really means. You can't decide for yourself. You're too close. You're too personal, too subjective.
Got it, right.
So Joseph has these dreams, and he can't believe what he's hearing. His brothers are all going to bow to him. And then he has another dream, not only his brothers, his mother and father. He can't believe this. There's got to be nonsense. So he tells his father and his brothers the dream to see how they would interpret it. And of course, they interpreted it literally. They're all going to bow to him.
Right.
Joseph was a little shocked. I'm not sure he wanted that leadership role at the age of 17. But it proved that that this was a valid prophecy and not just fanciful dream. So it was really the brothers, in interpreting the dream, that validated it.
Wow.
That it was in fact going to happen.